Greetings, I am Lies and I use she, her.
And I am Scandal and I use they, them.
And let's play a game together.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we have discovered there is an epilogue and we're gonna do it.
Alright, so which one do you want?
The dog in the frog is so ridiculously cute.
No.
I don't know. Which dog friend do you want, Shibe?
Hearing his name, Sheba turns brightly to Diya, tongue lolling out. His frog raincoat makes a crinkling sound against Min's arms as he wags his tail. He's too nice. He likes all of them. Diya peers down at a Pomeranian in the enclosure.
This one reminds me of you.
How?
I love the... Will, I can't decide. There are too many. Let the dog decide. Actually, it's like you. I want it.
Exactly.
Small, but thinks she's invincible.
Hey!
It's a charm point. I love you for it. I love that for you, too. Oh my god, what even is that?
Diya picks the little Pomeranian up and gazes into her black, soulless eyes.
Look at it. It's such a mess. It's so good.
It's pretty bad.
Your name is Palm. Shibu for the Shiba dog, Palm for the Pomeranian.
I think that actually happened before. Remember how they said, what would you call a Pomeranian? Like, it'd be like, I get a Pomeranian, we call it Palm.
Call it Palm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Alright, so that is the end of Butterfly Soup.
Okay, and so this episode is going to be largely a review, if you will. Because we wanted to sort of share our thoughts on the game. Mm-hmm. In the way that a lot of people do, where they click through various different scenes and talk about them. We're not going to do as much of that, so it's going to be a little bit more like a podcast from this bit.
Yeah.
So I think the epilogue is cute.
Yeah.
I enjoy that there is one. I had some really strong thoughts, and as this has been a little while since we played the last episode, about the wrap-up of the game. And we've had a bit of feedback across the game about like our interpretation versus like the game's possible intent and stuff like that. And without the author coming forward and saying it's impossible to know, but my primary I guess feelings on it were,
well, and the thing is so in my mind here, I'm gonna jump in.
Please go ahead.
There is a level of basically the author is dead kind of concept here.
Right.
Once you have a game or you have basically media, it is now more or less yours because it's your private personal experience. And we've said before, we are two people playing a game. One, that is not the way most of the games that we are playing are
designed,
meant to be played at all. And two, the point was actually, in a lot of cases for us, we talk about stories in regards to how they might apply to real life. Now, that is not necessarily the way that everybody wants to deal with them, and that's totally fine. And we've completely admitted, this is a fantasy, ridiculous, silly situation. It's meant to be emotional. We get usually what they're going for. But in this case, so at one point we had somebody come in, and this is not at all meant to be aggressive in any way.
This is meant to be an affectionate acknowledgement that we had some cool feedback.
Yes, somebody going like they thought that it was slice of life. And we were like, hang on, do we not understand then what slice of life is? And we went and we actually did some research about it, and we were kind of like, okay, so slice of life could be basically anything number of
that
things.
Doesn't fall into some other category.
Yeah.
Especially things that don't have a cohesive plot and are extremely episodic.
Which I thought was interesting, because to me, there felt more... So it was kind of that concept, like, so when I think about basically a lot of slice of life, I tend to think of basically one episode single, basically contained series. So like you have an episode, and a bunch of stuff happens, and then you go to the next episode, and it's like the other episode didn't happen at all. There's no continuing plot.
That's what I was going to say. And the thing
is, this one...
You can have continuing storylines, but the thing we sort of came to in both of our understandings of slice of life as we did our research was that, and this one isn't self-described as slice of life, but I can see where it came from for sure, of just going, this is just a bunch of fun, like, things that happen to people and just experiences. But the thing we both came to is that slice of life is a lot like a daytime sitcom. Yeah. Where basically no matter what lessons people learn in the episode, it doesn't carry over to the behavior of their character. Like, they might get married and they might move to a new house or whatever, and those are technically furtherances of the plot, but the characters don't change. Even if something dramatic or intense happens in their life, they are the exact same character from episode to episode, and you can pick up basically any one of them, except potentially a season finale, as a completely individual contained thing, sort of like an episode of Friends or of Seinfeld.
Yes.
And that feels very slice of life, except for I like anime better than live action. So
well, and I was going to say also what I think is interesting too is a lot of people go, oh, slice of life doesn't have a plot. Both Friends and Seinfeld, for the few episodes that I've ever watched, they have a consistent plot from beginning to end established in the singular episodes, like every single time. That is a plot.
So,
and I've seen a lot of people go, oh, well, this doesn't have a plot. And I'm like, Butterfly Soup totally has a plot. It has character development, advancement, and they have a beginning and an end.
I say
and also
more than a plot, which was get Diya and Min together. Which, because romances, that's the plot.
Yeah.
I would say is get the characters together. It had character development and change.
Exactly.
It had specifically progress. So even when you have individual contained episodes of things where they would technically like learn lessons or have experiences, or the theory of the episode is, you know, get the job or attend the event or whatever it is. Once they get to the next episode, it's essentially like it never happened as far as their character's core is concerned. Again, they didn't learn anything from it. Even if a character, you know, goes through an arc of I'm going to try being a vegetarian or a humanitarian or whatever it is, later on it could get called back to in a short verbal conversation, but it doesn't change who they are at all.
Right, and particularly in comedy, that's largely what I understand.
As far as I understand, a lot of slice of life, though not all, is lighthearted or comedic.
Yes.
So anyway, with all of that in place, and thank you for that setup, because if you've watched this whole series and you've gotten to hear, both of us were really, really disoriented at the beginning of this series.
Yes.
Its writing approach is very different than what we're used to. And again, this doesn't say anything negative to the writing. It just is a reflection on what we've read and been exposed to in our lives.
There's also the thing to consider as well, and we've talked about this in numerous cases, that when, one, you're playing with two people, when it's intended to be a one-person player experience, that alters your experience drastically, because we're already basically having a conversation with each other, and we have certain expectations as a part of our dynamic as to what we do, right? We come in basically with a lot of basically social expectations based off somebody else is here with us, we better engage with each other and have a discussion, and then also like what we think that looks like, etc. There's so many sociological layers basically to break down.
There's also a lovely little piece of it where one of us will commentate on something, because we are a very chatty channel. And the other one will respond to it going, I didn't think of that at all. So it immediately adds more a wider possible perception or different coloring to the media.
And also, again, we're not... so even just like us on our own, we're not the best, personally, I would say, with basically comedic stories.
Both of us have a harder time with comedy, and especially what I want to say is, like, this felt like, I believe this game was written in America? By an American?
I think so?
I'm pretty sure.
Anyways,
basically, physical comedy or slapstick comedy, both of us have a harder time with.
Yes.
I would say, especially any comedy that is based around secondhand embarrassment.
Yes.
So one of my good friends talked about how they can't handle comedy that's based around secondhand embarrassment because they're so empathic to the experience. It's just deeply uncomfortable. And I feel that in some ways, but I also have a hard time interpreting that it's comedy. So that was sort of what happened here. Like, there have been a number of cases where I've been exposed to something, and without being told that it was comedy, I missed the tone completely.
And I was also going to say as well, particularly with something that is a static experience. You don't have any voice acting, you don't have any animation, you don't have any like physical acting, as it were.
Anything to give a direct, immediate emotional tone.
This is again where you can kind of go into that death of the author, going like, I understand maybe what the author was trying to do, but because I'm by myself in my little circle with all of my ring of influences, blah, 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 etc., and I don't have any, like, there's no coding of Diya says this playfully, this person says it this way. Like, there's very little, basically, information surrounding the dialogue as to what the intent actually was. A lot of this stuff, especially when we started out, because we don't know these characters, our initial reaction of going, whoa, what is this? Is because it really, like, if you just read it flat, you could take it anyway. We've discussed multiple times that voice actors are so much fun. And we love voice acting because you can read a line 9 million different ways. And that really does mean you can read it the meanest freaking way possible, or you can read it in the nicest, most simping kind of, like,
honestly,
oh my God.
There's a really great example, and it isn't even in voice acting, so it would be to a wider range of audiences. So a lot of people have seen the Pirates of the Caribbean series.
Yes.
And at one point, I believe it's in is it in the second or the third movie where they released the Goddess of the Sea?
That is the third
The third movie.
one.
Anyway, so a little bit of a spoiler, but it's not massive. I would say there's a point wherein they need to say a specific line to remove a binding curse from a goddess. And so someone says it, someone else says it, and then someone's like, oh my God, you're saying it wrong. You need to say it like this.
Yes.
And it's not and it's not like the words are wrong or pronounced wrong. It's not like Leviosa. It's literally an emotional inflection on the performance of the line, a genuineness. And so, like, if you pull up that scene, either in your own mind or if you go look it up, that is a great example of it. But yeah, it's the sort of thing where if you have 14 voice actors without any instruction read a line, you'll get 14 very different reads. Now, if they're all told to read it dramatically or panicky or whatever, you'll still get 14 different reads, but they'll be in a much narrower range.
Yes.
And so at the beginning of this game, it took us a long time for the two of us to sort of get to know the author and to get to know the characters, because it was so different than what we were used to.
Right.
And the character tropes that I was used to reading weren't the ones I'm familiar with, weren't the ones that applied. Sort of like in the way of going, oh, Diya is the shy, strong, silent, athletic type, so she's going to be super nice. But she's not super nice. And that's just the trope I was used to. In the same way, but like Akarsha made more sense to me.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
particularly
Akarsha,
as we got more involved with Akarsha. So I was going to say, again, like, it is really interesting because I feel like for us, especially, this is a really good case of actually looking at what if you know what you're looking at, and even for me looking at what we did, I'm like, that basically informs kind of what our biases are. Really, really hard. Especially then once we started getting involved in, like, people's lives, like, specifically switching to other characters. I think that's when my friend and I actually started getting more involved, because then you're like, okay, now we're going to get a broader perspective from other characters. And even though they didn't have like a crap ton of detail, or here, dear diary, let me talk about more of how I feel, it was allowing us more access to what was going on. So suddenly it was able to make this switch for us of going, oh, there's this going on and this going on. And then I think that's actually, like, for me at least, now I'll talk a little bit about the ending in my case, is that I was kind of disappointed with that ending, really, because after all that sort of what I felt like was a build-up, a level of, like, I'm getting access to these characters, I understand what's going on, let's talk about all this sort of detail, it felt sort of either rushed, sort of incomplete, or just lacking, and wasn't really what I'd come to expect.
And I was going to say, I wanted to get in that too. Basically going, when I got really much better access to the characters and the story was, again, when, it moved around to others' perspectives. But that's because, again, I wasn't used to these kinds of characters and storytelling conventions. And so once I was in their head with their descriptions of how they're perceiving the world, especially in the case of Noelle, of going, so you do see Akarsha as a friend, not just as an annoyance, that kind of thing. Because externally, even Diya was like, yeah, they just kind of hate each other and they just rib on each other. But also, Akarsha is just this third wheel to everything that is never really supposed to be here or wanted here, but always insinuates herself.
Right.
And so that's Diya's perception. And then Noelle seems like she's in that same kind of thing, but even more aggressive of, oh my God, Akarsha, go away. And then you get into Noelle's head, and it was really interesting to dissect that character interaction. I wanted to spend more time with Akarsha and find out more what her life was like.
Right.
But also, I had thought that when we started moving from character to character, that was indicating a much bigger story arc being set up of everyone moving forward. And while I really liked the game overall, and this isn't a wow, but it is I really liked this game overall, and I don't think a lot of people are going to have the trouble accessing it that I did at all. It's just going to be a different level of reading. Again, one of the cool things about playing things blind and picking them up from like packs and other people's recommendations is you're going to get exposed to a lot of really different media. What disappointed me about the end, while it felt a little bit rushed to me as well, like very sudden, and it just cut everything off, was it felt like Diya monologued, which didn't feel like it was in her character at all. Now, people can step out of their character, but like that felt really weird for her suddenly stepping up and being like, yeah, the group is disorganized, so I will sort of be the leaderly person immediately and just talk them through this, which felt really strange for everything I'd learned for her to be so far. But beyond that, it sounded like what she was saying and what they were all kind of like, yeah, we're all just fucked up right now and that's okay, was that high school and going through basically puberty and your transition from childhood to adult is and has to be inherently a shitty, confusing, difficult, fucked up period in your life. And that's just how it is. Oh, well, that's the breaks.
Especially because it feels like the... Okay, so, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you real fast.
It's,
I think what my friend was saying, especially because what they were establishing was so clearly this basically concept of I'm trying to be me, and I've got all these basically obligations. I've got parents, I've got basically societal/ethnic responsibilities. That's the thing they brought up, the Asian parents, the Asian stereotype, like that was a real thing that freaking affects their life. And they're just going, yeah, and that all doesn't really... And they're just sort of letting it have a pass.
And so
even though it sounded like they were setting up for this big, conflict that was clearly there, but it never really seemed to resolve or reach any resolution. And now Diya's just going, yeah, and there we are. And you're like...
And it felt very much like it was removing any blame or responsibility from the parents and adults in their lives and saying, yeah, life is just like this when you're this age. Even though we've established that several of them have very abusive home situations.
Yes.
And so you go through and you learn that they all have these incredibly suffocating and in some cases directly really abusive, invalidating home circumstances. And then Diya sums it up as, well, life is just like this at this age. And then they're all like, ha, yeah, cue friendship music.
It was like, societal issues don't matter. Or people having responsibility doesn't really matter. It's okay, we're just kids, stuff's fucked up. I also, so one thing I felt like, though, I was really lacking, I'm still waiting for them to talk about Diya. Do you know that whole time, in the end, we didn't really get to find out, actually, a little bit more about, basically, we got a tiny bit about Akarsha's background.
Learned anything about Diya's home life, period.
None. Diya's home life doesn't exist, which I thought was really interesting. And it's also, so it's fascinating from if you are purely reading from the text. Okay? So again, from the text, I still think in some ways there is still some argument to be made. The argument that we kind of made at the beginning of going these just sound like a bunch of kids that are flailing so hard and going, I just have to tolerate you in my life and I have no choice, so I guess you're just going to be here. Which is the thing, the sort of conflict we had kind of with Noelle and Akarsha. Which again, I still ended up liking Akarsha a lot, but it's really just texturally, what is right there, you're kind of I don't know if you guys actually like each other still. There's this level of I have to tolerate you. Tolerate is not like.
It is. And the sort of thing of going, I have found things to like about them because they are in my life is different than I want them in my life.
Yes.
And I am like queen of I will find things to like about the shit that I have to have in my life. The people that I have to have in my life. The stuff that I have to have in my life. One of the things that every friend I've ever had has basically pointed out about me is you know how to make anything fun. And I don't know how to make that thing fun. What I know how to do is entertain myself while I have to do that thing. And so I have been told by outsiders going, oh my god, but you love this thing. You always have so much fun at it. And I'm like, no, actually I hate that thing. And the reason I look like I have more fun at it than things that I actually genuinely enjoy is because I have to have that outlandish, over-the-top experience of hyper engagement to try and make the fun where there is none.
Right.
And so it's a thing. But anyway, I in a lot of ways I felt Akarsha, but I wanted to learn more about what Diya's life was. Our primary character, we never got to get into her life in the same way. We don't even know parent situation or sibling situation or anything. And of course, we didn't learn all the details with all of them, though I do assume Noelle's an only child.
Possibly.
I was going to say based on...
but the thing is I really didn't feel a drive. Again, I thought everybody else's sort of tiny little details here and there, the little nuggets of information were interesting and they felt character exposited. But Diya was I've slept for 2 hours and then you hear nothing else. Nobody asks any question about how's your parents, how's your family.
I wanted to know,
oh my god, this stuff with my mom.
I thought it was a plot point why Diya was awake all the time.
Yes.
And why she was getting so little sleep. And I wanted to find out what she was doing. And I guess it wasn't. but I was like, is that supposed to be implying she spends a ton of time on homework like Noelle?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it supposed to be implying that she has like a really active online life? Or like, what is that?
It was also, I thought there was an interesting mechanic, and I don't know how to interact with it, where some games, so like Butterfly Soup, for example, seem to, weirdly enough, insist that actually what you were supposed to do, because I didn't catch it at first, because we've run into lots of games where they go, every single choice you make will affect something, right? So you're kind of sort of interacting with like who the character is by, for example, making them literally look at everything on the screen. Now, if you choose not to do that, that means you're also then making a different character choice. And remember, so what I'm talking about specifically is remember the food in the lunch bag,
yeah,
in the lunch bag,
look at Noelle's lunch,
or look at whoever. Yeah, I think it was Noelle's. And you just go, why the hell would we do that? And then later you're like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to? But I feel, because the thing is that we realize, so from our social backgrounds, there's just stuff you don't do and don't do. But it's interesting then to play games, I think, like this, where they go, yeah, of course you look at everything. And you're like, but why? Because we're so used to basically trying to find what we think the authors were thinking that a character experience, like a cohesive character experience, was the one that they were going for, what they were desiring, what they were trying to build. And so it was like, what are we doing?
One of the really interesting things in cases like that is that if the option is there, as a gamer, you want to pick it to see all the content. Also, if the option is there, it's something that's possible for the character to do. And so, in the case of this, where there were several like scenes we couldn't move through until we'd chosen everything, because that was the structure of the game, which I wonder how much that affects everything moving forward, or if it's literally just a linear one ending kind of story, but there's a lot of different like branches of experience you can have within it. I don't even know. And it doesn't matter. But it was interesting to do, but it was very interesting to get stuck occasionally of, these are all choices, but you have to choose all of them. And then going, okay, so it is demanding that who this character is a person who would do all of these things. And I was wondering how much it was, this is a character experience of Diya, or this is we want you to do this as a player to see all this stuff.
Right, because we have interesting things to show you. And I get sort of torn in that case, and I'm kind of like, why would you do this? Because then I'm just like, so you literally just sort of took a novel or a short story and you sort of broke it up where you forced people to interact with all the pieces?
In different orders.
In different orders?
I don't know. I do want to go across some things. So as far as the ending, it left sort of a weird emotional feeling to me of going, that felt like it ended rather suddenly. Even as I really enjoyed the end of the game, it felt like it was, the resolution is that they finally are involved with each other, and that people are all for sort of getting along, and now they're a friend group. And I feel like that's what the story was trying to tell based on that resolution. What it wanted to tell was, this is how four people who didn't really get along end up getting along and being a tight-knit group. And I think it did that successfully, but that wasn't what I wanted out of it based on, like, the other exposition felt like it muddied that point to some degree in the way that they did set up so much personal lives for the individual characters outside of Diya.
Well, and okay, so I'm going to put this option out here that it is very possible, honestly, that this is truly like a very simplistic slice of life, because as we said, stuff doesn't really change. As far as, so the thing is,
it does
no, work with me here.
Okay.
Butterfly Soup was not intended to be played as long as we played it. So the thing is this
rather quickly.
So a lot of people probably would click through rather quickly, and it sounds like, so based on, I don't remember what the estimate is on the itch page, but they're really, like, I was like, we went over a lot. We did the same thing with Doki Doki Literature Club, and we've talked about that in practically every single game. It's a joke, actually, we have really with each other of just going like, they say it's going to take 15 minutes, it'll take us an hour.
You know, it would take about 4 times as long to do anything with 2 of us and talking about it than with just the expected playtime.
And that's the thing also that too, you have to keep in mind for us playing this. So in some ways, like, we have a sort of very different artificial experience compared to other people, because we are 2 people, again, playing a game in a very certain, a very specific kind of way, and also with our own certain set of expectations, and that stories themselves will actually literally be different for us playing together, especially with the expectations that we're using, like I mentioned, because there's two of us.
Well, I was gonna say there's also a difference
might have actually...
as we've talked about before, in pacing.
Yes.
Where if you don't click through things quickly, it does change the pacing of a story. Now, I did want to go through and say some things that I really, really liked about this game.
Go ahead.
Specifically, I really enjoyed that it did deal with racism, and that it was straight out about it. I also liked that it dealt with specifically the cultural disguising of racism to children.
Yes.
Where you had your date interest, Min. You had Min going, no, we learned that racism is over, and because she was in also a small Asian community, she's like, this is totally not a thing. We watched the video, the teachers, the authority told us this is not a problem anymore. And like, that's the entire narrative that I've had my entire life about like colonialism, that it was these oppressed and basically sort of suffocated people that were just trying to do good by themselves, getting away from a suffocating society and going to live their best lives, you be you. Not going and killing indigenous people to steal shit from them so that they can have radical and specific beliefs.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and the thing is it's still very new information to be commonly shared, going, yeah, colonizers are actually incredibly awful people, kind of thing. And so that's also a very controversial statement that I'm putting out there right now, but that's my understanding, and I'm good with that. I am fine with that understanding. Mm-hmm. But I really liked that the game included that racism, and again, specifically the contrast of teaching kids that racism doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. I also really liked that you had a character with a disability, your main character, and it wasn't the point of their character.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of media that I've been exposed to where if someone is disabled, it seems to be the crux of their character. And having known a lot of disabled people in my life, especially because my mom is disabled, and she was in numerous, communities for similarly disabled people and also, their friends and stuff. So I met a lot of disabled people growing up in various different ways. And it was like, their disability is not the center of their life in the same way that your ability isn't the center of your life.
No.
So it's your limitations aren't your whole character in any way. And I really liked that with Diya, it took a very long time to come out, and it also wasn't a point of importance to the people that knew her other than to consider this thing and be aware of it.
Do you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me a little bit of, in some cases, the way that some people will talk about, for example, like the queer community. And I'm using that as an umbrella term here, but basically anybody who follows under LGBTQ+, etc. Just the queer community as a whole. A lot of people go, why do you make your whole personality all about that? It's like, they didn't. Mm-mm. You did. Society did. Mm-hmm. Because you said that you're not okay. Like, where are you going, like, oh, all people who are disabled, it is all about your disability. And a lot of people who are differently abled go, What?
No.
You're making it all about my disability. Uh-huh. I am not just this thing.
I'm just living my life.
I'm just existing.
I was saying, and so I really liked that piece. I also really liked that you did get to experience really different home circumstances.
Uh-huh.
And so, but you had also a diverse ethnic cast, but all Asians.
Yeah.
As far as your core cast.
It's a huge part of the world, by the way.
It's also that there is this sort of experience that I grew up with in America of basically going, you're Asian, and it's just an umbrella term that smears everything together, and the only differences I learned was Japanese or Chinese.
Yeah.
Like that was the white experience that I grew up with. Mm-hmm. Was there's basically, Asians, white, or there's Japanese or Chinese.
Right.
And which of course is just one, there's not only those two and just those. Also, China is freaking huge. Chinese is a giant umbrella term for many, many, many cultures. So I really liked that was in there, that they all came from different backgrounds in that way. Mm-hmm. And so that was neat. I also, as I got used to it, and as the humor got pulled away from it, because at the beginning, it's specifically about bullying. I'm talking about bullying here. So in reference to them bullying each other or doing aggressive actions towards each other, specifically like with Noelle and Akarsha and their sort of battles, as it were, but like the whole toilet water and the library scan and the I'm gonna do this various things to attack you, the trash can, whatever it was, right? And Diya just being like, yep, this is who they are together. They just continually try and hurt each other and play it off like a joke. Mm-hmm. Or Akarsha plays it off like a joke and Noelle is actually angry about it.
Right.
I liked how when they moved forward, the comedy element seemed to be pulled out of that, and it was discussed more as real-world behavior. Like, once you got to the restaurant with all of them, and you had Min engaging with Noelle, going, oh my god, did you really the toilet water? And Noelle talked about it, it brought it out of slapstick comedy, just, oh my god, kind of territory, and into a real human thing of, look, this person pisses me off and hurts me, and I'm trying to level the playing field, but also the reason I'm so pissed off and angry at this person is because of, we've learned at that point, very personal experiences, including that she gets to have fun and you don't, as it were. And so I liked that complexity being added. I also liked them learning to be friends with each other. A lot of the moments where they connected with each other felt very, very real. And the moment in the gym where Akarsha and Min were together, and Akarsha was doing the sort of rap thing of just vomiting her depression to, the void, if you will. One, I thought that was a really good expository moment for Akarsha of just going, you are profoundly depressed, and you do, in fact, cope by being class clown, if you will. That is how you cover up your unhappiness in a lot of ways, by forcing ridiculous fun and also making it so no one will take you seriously, so no one will try and get close to you. That's how you also create a boundary. And then you get Min recognizing this pain completely and going, you know what? We do have something in common. And the skateboard moment, doofy as it was actually kind of powerful. But also when they devolved into a fist fight afterwards, like, I've seen almost exactly that in real life, where you have a connective moment of, like, intimacy, vulnerability, and fun, and then you go, shit, I can't do that. And so the pullback is awkward, like hits too hard. And then the defense usually devolves into something really strong, like the fist fight. Like, it felt very, very real to me.
Yeah.
Something that I did want in the story that I feel like it wasn't the author's focus, so there's no obligation to put it there, but given the queer narrative of the game and also Min's journey that we got to see, I really wanted to know more about Min's gender experience.
Yes.
Especially where it was included with the, the family bathroom of, well, anyone of any gender can use it. That scene felt so much like I don't know what I am because I'm clearly not a girl. And you're not a boy because you were raised with such a hard gender binary based on the game. So you're going, I just don't know what I am because I can't be either of these things.
Right.
Because I'm clearly not this because I hate everything about it, and I'm not that because obviously I'm not.
Right.
And I wanted more of that. And maybe it just wasn't being explored that deeply, but, like, we did get a chance for Diya to, even in her limited dialogue kind of way, to really explore, I think I'm a lesbian because I'm attracted to my best friend. To go, and whether or not it's a lesbian, just going, I'm queer, I'm in love with men. And I thought that was really neat, so I wanted to know more about that. Also, I thought the art was super cute in this game.
Yeah.
It's just other good things. I thought the art was super cute.
The way they adapted things.
I loved how the artist aged up the characters. I loved how soft and happy Diya looked, like, so often. I loved how angry Min looked. I loved the fact that Akarsha really was larger than life, as the dialogue suggested, with the really big expressions and stuff like that. And also with Noelle, that was things I liked. I loved that they changed clothes.
Yes!
It made it feel like so much more of a real space that they changed clothes and they wore different things to do different stuff, and none of it felt like super special. It didn't feel like, here's a premium scene of seeing the character in a different outfit and then we'll go back to the normal sprite kind of thing.
Right.
It just was, of course they change clothes, they're people. So I thought that was really neat. I also enjoyed some of the specific CGs that were in there. The kiss of Min crawling across the table was really fucking adorable. Like, the whole scene felt way more ridiculous and way more, like, comedy accessible to me after knowing the characters that well.
Right.
And having spent that much time in the world, and it was just super cute. Like, it was dumb and it was too much and it was really cute and I loved it. I say, other things, like, I liked that the game was really well written, as far as, like, we didn't run into grammatical errors. Like, a lot of people don't really mention it when it's well done, but, like, it can pull you out of a game really hard when, like, the punctuation's wrong, when you do or don't have caps in the wrong place, when a sentence just drops, when words are repeated really hard. I felt like this game was very clean in the writing. For
very consistent.
Like, very largely it was. And I also liked when we were inside the different characters' heads, how we pointed out specifically with Min describing Diya, how it was like, it felt like them talking and describing the world.
Yes, it was so good!
They had good character voices.
Yes.
So I really liked that. I also liked that they did, while having unified struggles they could all relate to, they were really different people. It was also fun to see all the various different backgrounds. I also liked some of the conventions in there, like the being inside the chat was a really fun visual convention when we were in the chat group. I liked that.
That was great.
I also really, really enjoyed how Diya expressed herself the same on, like, in text as she did in her own head, which is the exclamation points of excitement kind of thing. Of, I can't talk, but kind of thing. That was deeply charming. I also enjoyed that while Diya is clearly very, very smart and educated and intellectually skilled like her friends, she doesn't, like, she isn't one of those... She isn't the trope of, well, I can't talk because I'm super fucking nervous, but when I type or write, I'm an absolutely brilliant intellectual. Because I've run into that a lot of people going, well, I just can't get it out in words if I'm speaking. But then, like, I have these brilliant essay-style papers, and I write these amazing love letters and pourings of, emotion and stuff. And I liked that she was the same person in both places, so it wasn't like this massive secret internal life. Even though she did have anxiety and, like, a disconnect from the world, it was just who she was.
Yeah.
And so that was neat for me. Other than that, I liked that there were other characters in the game and there wasn't a lot of isolationist fantasy.
There was also, actually, all the side characters changed clothes too.
That was very
that's
cool.
actually a thing to point out. There was also numerous backgrounds. I really, once we actually finally got our sound working, or when it did work.
The music is charming.
God, it's so charming. I love all the little noises, the booping for them talking. They have tiny little beep speech, but not, aggressively. It's just, stuff loading in. It's really charming.
The sound profile of the game is nice. I like the little, scuffing of the sand occasionally here and there, the dog barks, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was great. Great sound design, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And so, overall, I would say, yeah, I liked this game. It was disorienting for someone basically who is not used to aggressive characters and aggressive comedy. And the bits that brought me out of it were, again, with going... So are there real world consequences or not?
Right.
My big anxiety for myself at the end of the game was going, okay, but is Min gonna end up going to juvie?
Yeah.
Going, if Men is that violent and that aggressive and that basically rule breaking, is Men going to end up going to jail? Because that would be a huge barrier to their relationship and their fun and their comfort and everything. Now, I can only assume, since they're getting dogs together, that in the epilogue, they've made it to adults, at least 18. Mm-hmm. And they have freedom to choose to, 1, be together, and 2, to choose their pets. Because the households they were in clearly weren't allowing that kind of freedom. Mm-hmm. So I like that it did basically... sort of assert that of going, they went forward in the future together and they made it at least this far doing okay. Mm-hmm.
Or at least we assume. Because honestly, you don't know. I've known some horrific messes that go get animals to fix problems.
Well, and the thing is they both looked clean. They didn't seem anxious. They weren't talking about money. They weren't talking about, Min's parole or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I assume that the real world consequences of, being violent and breaking the rules at school and taking, knives and guns places, was meant to be more of an emotional informant to the reader of this is how deeply unhappy and rebellious of the control that's been put on him that Min is. Rather than they actually racked somebody with a baseball bat in front of everybody who was a worker and actually threatened someone with a knife and didn't get in any trouble, at a school where in California, I know there are police at a lot of those schools and they do a severe weapon control.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that was a lot of my thoughts.
And it's only gotten worse, but that was also 2008. So.
That was a lot of my thoughts on the game. I liked the broader cast of characters and the fact that they were there. I liked the writing. I enjoyed the way it wrapped up, and when I finally could really access things once it went around and showed me the other characters and things, that really helped me out.
That was a big transition for me.
I'd say, but this game was definitely, the types of characters in it were things that I'm not used to, and it was really interesting interesting to get exposed to something that for me was very new. I also liked getting through this whole thing with my friend here and with all of you, as many of you are as here. I was gonna say, and finding something very new and different. So thank you for joining us for that. Do you have other thoughts? I kind of dominated that. I have a lot of opinions.
I was about to say, I think you've covered a lot of mine, so I won't worry about it too much. Honestly, guys, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. We love to have you here. If you like what we do, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, interact with the video. It actually does a lot for us in regards to the YouTube algorithm.
Yep.
Please also feel free to go check out our Ko-Fi, Patreon, and our Twitch. We have some links in the description down below, and we'd love to see you at any of those. And, I have been Scandal.
And I have been Lies. And it was great playing with you. Bye!